What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about some sell-high players heading into Week 7 of the NFL season. So just players maybe coming off of big Week 6s. I think it's probably best to move off these guys before they come back down to earth. If you enjoy the video, hit that like button, subscribe. Any questions, drop them down below. But let's just dive right into my first sell-high player here, and it is going to be Benjon Robinson. I really liked Benjon heading into the year. I thought he'd be the workhorse. I thought he'd be this high upside RB1. That's definitely not what we had seen through 5 weeks, but I was still somewhat optimistic that he could turn it around. I did like him specifically in Week 6 because of the matchup. I still thought he could kind of pull away in this backfield, pull away from Tyler Algier, and we did see him have a huge game in Week 6, 15 carries for 95 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, added 3 receptions for 10 yards, put up 25 and a half PPR points. The problem is that the usage is still far from ideal, and it's kind of getting worse at this point. He was actually out-carried by Tyler Algier. Like I said, Benjon had 15 carries. Tyler Algier was all the way up at 18. And like that carry split isn't great. Obviously, you want him to be leading the backfield in carries, but like 15 carries isn't a bad number. The more concerning part is the goal line usage. Tyler Algier saw 6 of the 8 goal line snaps. That's just not going to fly for Benjon Robinson here. If he is splitting carries, he's not dominating the goal line work, which is going to limit his touchdown upside. I know he scored 2 touchdowns this week, but the touchdowns had been lacking. That goal line split is very, very bad. And it's also not like he's excelling as a pass catcher. Like, he's fine. He's giving you something through the air, but it's not like he's killing it in that department. I'm just not really seeing where the upside's coming from. I'm not seeing how he's going to live up to that high-end RB1 ADP. And so I fully expect him to be a fantasy running back one rest of season. I think he's probably more in like that mid to back end RB1 area. But like I said, he was drafted to be a high upside RB1 unless we see a significant shift in his role and his usage and Tyler Algier kind of phased out of this offense. Like, I don't think he's going to hit that. It doesn't seem like it's in the range of outcomes for him to just completely overtake this backfield. They clearly like Tyler Algier. So maybe someone in your league has liked Benjon. They've been kind of, anticipating this huge breakout game. Now that he went out, had a big Week 6, now they're going to buy in. They still think he can be that RB1 rest of season. I think at this point, looking at some potential trade targets, probably unlikely that you could get a guy like Kenneth Walker. If you could, I would love it. Some other names I like are Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, Devon Achane. Obviously, those 3 kind of have different values here. But I think if you can convince someone that Benjon is, significantly ahead of those dudes, you could flip him for Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, get a minor positional upgrade, in a different position, get a minor wide receiver upgrade, minor QB, tight end upgrade, whatever it might be. A guy like Achane is probably valued, way lower than Benjon Robinson at this point. So if you can get Achane and then get a decent positional upgrade somewhere else, I think that's interesting. I just think at this point, I'm kind of giving up on him being like this elite upside, high-end RB1. The usage just has not been there. I don't see it like turning around in a significant way. So it's unfortunate. Like I said, I really liked Benjon. I thought he could be this like elite fantasy option. I just don't think it's happening. So Benjon Robinson, my first sell high. Another running back who I'd be selling high on is J.K. Dobbins. He's had a really impressive start to the season, 15.8 PPR points per game. In 5 games, he has 438 rushing yards. He's averaging 5.3 yards per carry. And if you drafted him like in the double-digit rounds, he could have been your RB4, your RB5 pick. He has been and likely will be a massive hit at his ADP. So if you drafted him, like I said, he's a fantastic pick. I just think value-wise, he's probably approaching like that back-end RB1 territory in the mind of a lot of fantasy players. He's been super efficient. He's had some big games. His workload has been solid, but I do have a couple concerns here with J.K. Dobbins. The first one is somewhat minor, but I do want to point it out here. His lack of receiving usage is not ideal. Through 5 games, he's only been targeted 13 times. He's caught 12 of those for 50 yards. So the receiving production, very, very minimal. And that can result in a pretty low weekly floor. If you struggle on the ground like we saw in Week 3, in Week 4, if you don't have that receiving floor and you're not getting into the end zone, it can definitely be a rough fantasy day. We saw that with back-to-back games under 10 PPR points. So that's like a minor concern. My main concern here is just the injury history and the durability. And if you guys have followed my channel, you know that I'm pretty much like the last person to call someone injury prone. I think the vast majority of like the injury prone narrative that gets thrown out there is BS. Like a lot of times a dude will sprain his ankle and then he'll like sprain his shoulder and then he'll pull his hamstring. And it's just like a string of unlucky things that happen. And then people just go out, they run with it. Oh, he's always injured. I can't trust him. He's injury prone. Like I see it all the time in my comments. I think CMC is a prime example. Maybe not great that, he's hurt this year, but heading into what was it like 2 years ago, it was like, oh, you can't draft CMC. He's injury prone. He never plays. Then he logs back-to-back super healthy seasons with the 49ers and is like a league winner in both those years. So I'm not the guy to jump on the injury prone thing. But for J.K. Dobbins, like injuries have pretty much been the story of his NFL career. From 2021 through 2023, Dobbins played 9 out of 51 possible games. So the dude played less than 10 games over a 3-year span. He hasn't played over half a season since his rookie year in 2020. And what makes me worried here, I mean, first off, right, it just seems like the huge injuries have kind of followed him, the torn ACL, the torn Achilles. I think that's obviously going to eat into your durability, moving forward. But he's also handling by far the largest workload of his NFL career. When he was with the Ravens, even his rookie year when he was healthy, he wasn't a workhorse. He was in a split. His touches were kind of managed. This year, they're just force feeding him on the ground. He's racking up a lot of opportunities. I'm just worried about if he's going to be able to stay healthy, throughout the entire season with that usage. I really like Kamani Vidal as like a waiver wire pickup. He's someone I've been talking about. I do think at some point he's probably going to get his opportunity. So if I can pivot off of J.K. Dobbins, someone views him as like a fringe RB1, and I can pivot to like a Devon Achane, a James Cook, I'd be willing to do that. The Achane thing might be controversial because I think a lot of people think he's injury prone. I think personally he kind of falls into that bucket I talked about earlier, where rookie year had a few different injuries. Throughout college, he was super healthy, had the concussion, early on this year, but I don't think he's proven that he's injury prone. So for J.K. Dobbins, I think it's a great story. I'm glad that he's playing well. He's someone I've been in on in previous years. I just don't know if I want to be holding the bag for him and banking on him staying healthy throughout the rest of the season. So if you can pivot to a Achane Cook, I'd be willing to do so. Another sell high here is going to be Keenan Allen. And this was Keenan Allen's kind of like first big fantasy game here at the Bears. 5 receptions on 5 targets for 41 yards and 2 touchdowns. Maybe I'm being pessimistic here with Keenan Allen, but like this game really doesn't make me much more excited about him moving forward. I do think Caleb Williams, like logging back-to-back impressive passing days, is a great sign for like all these weapons, this offense as a whole. But I'm still just not seeing the path to consistent upside or a solid weekly floor here for Keenan Allen. At this stage of his career, he's just not being used down the field. Coming into this game, he had a 7.9 ADOT. I don't think that's going to go up after, week 6, where I think his longest reception was like 11 yards. He only has 2 deep targets on the season. And like, it's not a killer to be a low ADOT guy, not be used down the field. Like, you can be a fantasy wide receiver 1 with that type of usage, with that type of target selection, but you have to be a volume option. You have to be racking up a lot of opportunities. And Keenan Allen has done that in his career, especially recent years, where he might not be used down the field, but he's just being peppered with targets from a guy like Justin Herbert. I just don't see him racking up that volume here at the Bears. This is an offense that has DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, who's probably going to break out later in the year, Cole Kmet, DeAndre Swift, in a game where Caleb Williams threw for 226 yards, 4 touchdowns. There was not a single pass catcher who saw more than 5 targets in this game. And so do I think Keenan Allen's going to consistently put together higher target games than DJ Moore? No, I don't. Do I think he's going to blow away Rome Odunze rest of season? No. Cole Kmet, Swift are going to be involved, like I mentioned. And we saw he had 5 targets. 3 other guys in this matchup hit that 5 target number. Like I said, I think Rome Odunze going to get more and more involved in this offense, has the potential to potentially overtake Keenan Allen with those wide receiver 2 routes. So I feel like Keenan Allen has the name value. He has the pass production. He's been a reliable fantasy wide receiver 1 in recent years. I would use this game to try to get off of him. Maybe people think this is him breaking out, getting healthy, becoming a big part of this Bears offense. For me, this is just a spot where I want to pivot. I still wouldn't feel super comfortable starting Keenan Allen week to week. So some potential trade targets I'd be looking at here. I think Jordan Addison is interesting. I like Ladd McConkey, Darnell Mooney off a down game, Cortland Sutton. I think these are all interesting players here. A couple young guys, a couple of veterans, but if I can get off of Keenan Allen, I would. And then my final sell high player is going to be Mark Andrews. And he finally did something this season. Coming in, thought he had like that high-end tight end 1 upside. He's been a non-factor through the first 5 weeks. He goes out week 6, commands 4 targets, catches 3 of them for 66 yards and a touchdown. If I'm being honest, this game really didn't do much for me. Like, even with his bad usage, he was bound to have a decent game at some point. Like, it's not like he was going to be just 17 straight unplayable weeks for fantasy. It just wasn't going to happen, even if the usage wasn't there. Like, random tight ends have a breakout game, at least a couple times throughout a season. I will say, I guess one positive is that he did see an increase in his route participation. It was up to 60%. I believe he was sub 50% last week. I think this is his highest route participation since week 2. So that's somewhat of a positive sign, but a 60% route participation is still really bad. Like, that is not a good number. That is not a number that is playable for fantasy. And he had 4 targets, like turned it into a solid fantasy day, but 4 targets on 26 attempts. It's a 15% target share. That's not great. It might seem like I'm just dumping on him and I'm being super negative. And I guess I am kind of being negative here, but I'm just trying to get the point across that I don't think one big like bounce back game means all of a sudden he's going to return to the Andrews of old or that he is going to be some reliable option moving forward. I feel like the Ravens have kind of revealed what they think about Mark Andrews at this point. It's pretty clear they think he's washed. If they didn't, his usage would have been a lot better from the jump. So instead of falling into the trap of like thinking Mark Andrews is going to be this nice option moving forward, I'd rather look at it from the perspective of this is the window right here to move off of him. I mean, if you still even have him on your roster, like I do think he was cuttable coming into this week. So some potential targets. You have Tucker Kraft coming off a down game, but I still think he's more interesting. I like David Njoku as a buy low. Kyle Pitts, I think, is fine, better than Mark Andrews. Pat Freiermuth, I'd take him at this point. So I would be getting off of Mark Andrews, use the name value. Hopefully someone thinks this is him turning it around. Personally, I just do not. But that's going to wrap it up for my 4 sell high players. If you guys enjoyed the video, do me a huge favor, hit that like button, subscribe. Thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.